Welcome back on the second leg of our big stories on the AM show. And we're contemplating the LGBTQI plus bill, or the anti-LGBTQI plus bill. Parliament has unanimously adopted the promotion of the Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill 2022. The intent to proscribe LGBTQI plus and its related activities. But this comes amidst the pushback from civil society organizations who have raised some human rights concerns. Today, we discuss the arguments for and against and whether the nation is ready for this bill to be passed into law. We ask, what is going to be the social, political, economic cost to the nation? Well, we're joined by our guests this morning. Dr. Appiah Kubi is a member of the Coalition of Proper Human Sexual Rights. He joins the conversation. We also have a lawyer, Kweku Paintal, joining the conversation. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. I think you may have to unmute because I can't hear either one of you.
Good morning, please.
Right. A very good morning. Thank you for joining the conversation. I can hear you now, both of you. I'll start with you, Lawyer Paintal. So looking at the processes so far in Parliament, in the course of this segment, we're going to be bringing you some scoop on what exactly transpired on the floor of Parliament. But what do you make so far of how this bill has progressed in Parliament to this point where it has practically been given the nod? You may have watched the Speaker posing the question some days ago about those members of Parliament who were not for the bill to rise, and no one did. What do you make of the processes so far?
I think so far so good, and I'm very happy that no one member of our 275 House Parliament, anyone stood up against the bill. So that talks for unanimity. In other words, there's consensus by Ghanaian society as represented by our members of Parliament in our lawmaking chamber, where all laws in this country are supposed to be made. That speaks for all Ghanaians, and there can be nothing better than that.
All right. For you, Dr. Appiah Kubi, what is your reaction?
Yeah, thank you very much, and my greetings to Lawyer Pinto, one of the people that I've been listening to here and there, looking up to him in many areas. Yeah, actually, I was very happy, the fact that everybody agrees. Of course, I'm expecting that I was expecting that people will be talking a little bit about maybe let's do it this way, let's do it that way, and all that. But generally, it went very, very well, and I'm very grateful.
Okay, so let's look at the practicality of the situation. We don't have all the details in terms of what the amendments are that have been brought to the bill from its initial form to the form that we find it now. But there was a lot of criticism of this bill, proposed bill on proper human sexual rights and values. I get it twisted all the time, but we all know. And now there is some sort of reviewed form that has breathed some new life into the bill, which makes it acceptable. But when you look at our terrain, there was that Afrobarometer report from some time back that spoke about the level of tolerance of Ghanaians, among other African countries, for LGBTQ, among others. And it was very low. In fact, the level of intolerance was over 90%. Would you say that a bill like this, as far as our Constitution, I believe Section 105, the Criminal Code, Section 104, 105, 106, talk about unnatural carnal knowledge and the rest, and where we're going with this, do you feel it is reflective of Ghana, of what we stand for, of our culture, of our mores? Lawyer Paintal. Hello, Mr. Paintal.
I believe it does, and I'd like to speak to you. Hello?
Please go ahead. I couldn't hear you initially.
Hello?
Lawyer Paintal, please go ahead.
Hello?
I could not hear you initially. Go ahead now. I can hear you. Well, I think so Lawyer Painter, if you can hear me, sometimes when you start talking, I can't hear you. I think now you've actually muted yourself again. So let's try this one more time. If you can hear me, just unmute and say what you're saying.
Off. Is it better?
Yes, go ahead.
Is it better with the video off?
Yes, go ahead. All right, let me throw that question to you, Dr. Apiakubi, on the same bit about the processes it has gone through. And is this reflective of Ghanaians and what we stand for? Dr. Apiakubi, that question is for you now.
Yes, please. I said actually it is really reflective. The fact that Ghana, we do not want certain things that really will not be good for our culture, and yet to be tolerant enough not to have very draconian one like the one in Uganda, because we Ghanaians are loving and caring people. Because when they talk about this LGBT thing, normally we think about a man sleeping with a man and a woman sleeping with a woman. But you and I know the LGBTQI, it's not like what I normally say that GPRT or Aggrieved Teachers Association. Every single letter represents a certain group of people. Now, so it's not just male and female gender. The LGBT community believe 100 genders. Some of them are very, very strange. And so when it comes to those homosexuals, so to speak, like a man sleeping with a man, a woman sleeping with women, I've been always saying that these groups have been with us time immemorial. Somehow I make a joke since the day of John the Baptist or since the day of Genesis, they've been with us. Some of them are our brothers, some of them are our sisters, some of them are our parents and all that. And they've never seen it as something that they are very proud of. But now the LGBT this thing is way beyond that. LGBT movement is a whole social change movement where they are taking the thing to the absurd level that if we don't take care and we don't have some laws that will really regulate some of these things, it's going to be a challenge. And so I really think that it's very reflective and it's going to help our country. Again, as you see the law, it's not like Uganda one where, all these, so to speak, lack of a better word, very strong sentences and all that. But it's just something to see to it that the things that are happening in the US and in the Europe and others won't come to our country. Actually, I wanted to say that the law, by God's grace, I was one of those who wrote the bill or brought the bill, wrote it. And I would like to really, for people to understand the spirit of the bill, not so much of the letter of it. The spirit of the bill wasn't necessarily to really hurt people who are into homosexuality, but really to prevent this absurd LGBT things that are coming to nations and using political strategies, using UN, using the other CSOs to bring all these things. So generally, I think that it's a good one, generally.
All right. You talk about the fact that these actions are not good for our culture and that the law, or at least the bill, which is being pushed for it to become law, will not be draconian. We don't have the fine print to be able to determine that. But if you say that it's not going to be as I don't want to use the word draconian, but as stringent as what we find in Uganda, what do you mean? Because people say that, listen, there's still jail time to be suffered for people who engage in certain actions that they feel are within their rights. So how do you address the rights perspective, those who clothe this in the bedsheet of human rights, and how far away do you think we are from the Ugandan law on this?
Very far to me. Very far. Because for the Ugandan one, so far as I know, there's death sentence. I can't speak for them. Nevertheless, what I believe strongly that when it comes to our laws, is some way somehow is something that I think I'm not saying right. Okay, our laws is some way somehow, as I said, is very much to protect those strange cisgender and non-binary and pansexual. A pansexual is somebody who sleeps with both animate and inanimate objects. Now, we don't talk about bestiality. The LGBT people say there's no bestiality, but they have a term for what they are doing. And so it is actually something that we want to prevent. But must also remember that the law is not there to, for example, somebody, we were in Cape Coast University last week doing a seminar, and one professor, a very good friend of mine, came to me and said, yeah, the bill you guys have done well. So my fear is that it's going to give advantage for people to be accusing people wrongly, beating them and stuff. I said, bro, it's exactly actually the opposite. If you read the bill will tell you that anyone who take the law into his or her own hands and try to hurt somebody, that person, the law is also going to deal with him or her. In fact, here in Ghana now, people will see somebody and they make, hey, and they make all those fun, or just try to bring the person, stereotyping people and stuff. The bill is actually frowned upon some of these things. So it's quite different from that. Remember, this is done very much in the context of Ghanaian culture. And Ghanaian culture is a culture of tolerance. Tolerance doesn't mean that we should open up for people to do whatever that they want.
All right. Thank you for those initial thoughts, Dr. Appiah-Kubi. Let me come to lawyer Kweku Paintel. I hope we can have a fluid conversation now. Over to you on the same question I posed earlier.
Afrobarometer 10. I think we need to draw a distinction between a sense of disapproval and a reaction consequent upon that disapproval. In other words, I've no doubt that in Ghana, when you possibly assemble 10 people, 7 or 8 will show their strong disapproval of these gay and related rights. But there are no statistics that matches that sense of disapproval, in the sense of attacking that community. We grew up in communities, we knew boys who were Kokojo-Besia and so forth and so on. I'm not too sure that anybody's got the facts that shows that any number of those people were attacked in any particular manner. In other words, the statistics for disapproval is itself not evidence of the way they are treated in terms of attacks and so forth and so on. And so I don't know the indices that the Afrobarometer people took into consideration in bringing out those statistics. So that's the very first point. And it reinforces what Dr. has said, that in spite of our disapproval of this behavior, we have been very tolerant of such people. Indeed, and in fact, most of us believe that they need more help than possibly the law even affords them. Having said that, that's the first point. This argument about how they are treated in different countries and so forth and so on, with respect for me, is not the real issue. The real issue divides into whether we accept this behavior as a behavior that ought to be tolerated in a society or not. Because what I realize is that the whole argument is becoming, we are all rationalizing. Because see, once you divide the argument into two, those who support and those who are against, then everybody fetches all kinds of arguments and support and statistics and so forth and so on. So it blurs the picture. First, I'd like to make the point that way back from 1961, we had laws against what they called unnatural carnal knowledge.
Right.
That was it. We had laws against bestiality. But you know, with
So
growing,
from 1960.
Yes, with growing, of the population, with modernization and so forth and so on, the colors have been blurred. Indeed, even our Marriages Act does not even define who the persons to the marriage are going to be. We are all assumed that they were a man and a woman. And what has happened was that anything could go through. I remember many years ago, possibly about 20 years ago, there's a white man who came into the country, sodomized a lot of young boys, and when he was arrested, it appeared that there was no law to deal with the situation because the definition of sex was always between man and woman. And it became clear that in dealing with that situation, we did not even have the law. I happened to be the lawyer of this white man. And I saw that loophole. So what has happened is that we say that.
So you represented, just to clarify, you represented this person. Did he scrape through? Did he get to go scot-free?
I represented a man. But to cut a long story short, before the trial was over, he ran out of the jurisdiction. So that is what maybe your listeners need to know. But we say that fundamental problems require fundamental solutions. Because with the passage of time, now all these side issues are cropping up to the point where we need to retune, we need to redefine, we need to develop new concepts and new ideas to deal with the changing circumstances of the time.
So from where you sit, this bill is a step in the right direction because it fills the lacuna or those nebulous areas in the law, right?
Exactly that.
Okay, so let me push it further. Dr. Apiakubi was talking about the fact that, look, this is not reflective of who we are, the LGBTQ and what they stand for. And so while we have a society that is open, our culture also frowns on this. But let's look at the Ugandan example and put our own context into it. This bill, of course, was approved, given assent to by Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, and it's the Anti-Homosexuality Act of 2023. It's very specific, anti-homosexuality. Now, the case they make, you go to Human Rights Watch, for example, and they are saying they've been campaigning against this. They say Uganda's penal code already punishes same-sex conduct. And so this is just like trying to swat a fly with a sledgehammer with the enhancement of the law. You look at the fact that in Ghana too, we have our penal code, like you rightly said, which criminalizes. I think it's I've forgotten the exact. I've forgotten the exact wording, but it talks about. No, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm fully aware of unnatural carnal knowledge, but it calls it. Is it a misdemeanor as of now?
Yeah.
Right,
You're right.
I think it's 104 of the criminal code. Unnatural carnal knowledge. They also have this in their penal code. They've gone a notch further. And the worry is that, for example, it discriminates against people living with disability. It talks about the act of homosexuality being aggravated if the victim has a disability. It could go as far as even a life sentence, not even a life sentence, a death sentence, I should say, taking the person's life, depending on how aggravated it is. Is this not a slippery slope we're on in terms of this enhancement?
Well, I would agree with you, but the issue is how far or how extreme this is. In other words, we all agree. But when you go back to the debate, those who are against it, it's not like they accept that the conduct or the behavioral pattern ought to be prohibited. They don't agree to that. So they are using this extreme. Listen to me. Listen. The law is one thing, punishment is another. In other words, when we are dealing with issues of punishment, we can always tweak the law to make it milder, to modify, and so forth and so on. But I don't want us to lose the argument, which is the point at which each person's stance. In other words, do we agree as a country that it's about time that we dealt with this growing pattern of behavior in our society so as to eliminate it if it is possible? If it's not possible, so that we can control it to the extent that it does not create the havoc and the issues that we are already seeing. For me, that is the issue. As to how to punish people for the various aspects, we can come together. But now we are setting something in motion. And please, let no one believe, no one think, let no one, have any feeling that any law in this world is perfect. And that's why we've got a parliament that, with the passage of time, decides to relook at laws and so forth and so on. But the real issue, which I don't want us to lose sight of, you see, because let me show you, in the societies who have adopted these things, for instance, our criminal code deals with bestiality. Our criminal code deals with what we call sex within degrees of consanguinity. In other words, there are certain people that you cannot even marry as a matter of law. Now we have societies where now it's possible to have an affair with your own sister and have a child, and it's not an issue. So it's a graduation. Once you accept the logic in the way they do their things, then things begin to go and don't get to a point where you do not know how far you have gone. What I think we are trying to do in Ghana is that, having seen the signs, we have decided as a country that we need to nip it in the bud. First point. Second point is, if you have heard enough of West African politics, there was something they called the wager, the West African wager between Kwame Nkrumah and Hufo-Boigny. That was about political development. Nkrumah was a socialist. Hufo-Boigny was a capitalist. And the West African wager was a bet between them that give ourselves time, 15 years, and let us see which country has developed. All I'm doing is that we are throwing a bet to the Western world who are promoting all of this. They should allow us. We've got our law in place. Let us see in 15 years' time, maybe 20 years' time, let us see which society will be better than the other. They should give us this time. That is as simple as that. We are a people. We have a right to make laws for ourselves. We have a right to make a judgment of the things that we see and decide how to tackle the issues and the problems, prescribe punishments as we deem fit. If the punishments are too harsh, that much, I'm not going to have a quarrel with that. We can relook at the punishments and the sanctions and so forth and so on. But the real object, which I like to emphasize, is the fact that we owe it as a duty. Everything that we are doing is to stem the tide of this growing phenomenon. That is about all. How we go about it, we can always agree. If the law is too harsh or too stringent, come on, we can. If it is 5 years, we can now make it 3 years. If it's 3 years, we can now make it 1 year. But the issue is that those who are against the bill, they don't accept that we need to control that conduct or that behavior or what we think is absurd, what they are doing. That is about all. So all of these other arguments, I think with due respect, it's just diversionary. That's my view of the matter.
So in terms of protecting those who may, in one way or another, fall foul of the law, you are saying that basically there should be some measure to the extent the law will go in any punitive measures. We've not had the opportunity of seeing what the amendments have been to the bill, but it appears to have received the approval of even those who were against it in Parliament at the start. If you were to get to see it, and by which time probably it would be the law anyway, what would your recommendations be as of now in terms of what we had seen before in the initial bill or in the initial, that went back to Parliament for alteration? What would be your thinking on what we had seen before?
Once Parliament has made a law and subject to presidential assent, which is yet to come, once it comes out, it represents our collective wish or wishes. Then, like you said, if there are aspects of it, even now that it is going through that, reorganization, if it's 5 years and we think it should be 2 years, why not? If it's too harsh, we can always, I would even go as far as to say that possibly not everything needs to have a custodial sentence, possibly. But as far as the law stands as it is, and as we have spoken, I do not know the final form in which it's going to come out. I'll be patient enough. And if what comes out really raises the kind of issues and the fear that people have, please, that's something that we as Ghanaians can do with. But please remember that what sanctions are prescribed for any offense or any crime reflects the view, the apprehensions, the fears of the society that created that law. And therefore, no two offenses are the same. In the same category of this, what we call deviant behavior, there are some things which are more extreme than others. And to not be fair, in my honest view, it's like possession of cannabis. I mean, the minimum sentence is 10 years. And therefore, if somebody just threw it into your hands, you just smoke one, a jot, or they call it one, they've got a name for it. And somebody has got a haversack, a bag full. Then the person who had just one roll will get 10 years. The person who also gets the whole bag will have a minimum of 10 years. Those are the aspects in which we talk of unfairness in legislation affecting sentencing. But as it is now, I believe that the graded forms in which we have these punishments reflect our view of the severity of the offenses that have been listed. But nonetheless, it can still come down if we all decide that it should be so.
All right.
That's the way my view of the matter is.
All right. We'll be looking at what Parliament has been saying on this matter. But before we do that, before we get that report by my colleague, Kweku Asante, let me bring in Bernard Ahiafo. He is ranking member on the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Good morning to you, Sheriff.
Thank you for joining us on the AM show. Now, this bill has gone through a number of processes already in Parliament. There is some agreement on both sides, the minority and the majority, that this bill must see the light of day. But as of this point, there are still question marks. People still look at the Ugandan example and they say it is draconian, it is over the top. But the Ugandans also say this is what we stand for, these are our mores and we stand by them. There are fears that with our bill, we could also have such a situation on our hands. From where you sit, what is your reading of this matter and how would you respond to those with these concerns?
Well, I have an idea about what is happening in Uganda, but I have not taken my time to look at the content of the Ugandan law because they have passed LGBTQ, anti-LGBTQ law. However, looking at the...
So if I may walk you through...
I've not seen anything in the bill and the reference in Ghana's parliament being draconian. Because there's nothing draconian about it, unless specifically what that vision in the bill before us in parliament. The aspect that we feel is draconian.
Okay, so when you look at the Ugandan example, some of the aggravated crimes, and it's the anti-homosexuality law, a bill that came to law 2023, people could even suffer the death sentence as a result. For those who may be victims, who are people with disability, this could, the penalty for that is really steep. And according to what Human Rights Watch, for example, says, that would diminish the sexual rights of those people with disabilities. And there's a plethora of punitive measures for those in the LGBTQI plus community. Can you say for a fact, like Dr. Apiakubi has been suggesting, one of those who actually drafted part of what we see in the bill, that it will protect these people rather than expose them to public ridicule and maybe even mob justice?
Well, they are comparing apple and orange.
How so?
The anti-LGBTQ bill in Parliament right now. And tell me that. Tell me provision in that particular bill that suggests that people with that kind of disability law. So
I think you missed my point. You missed my point. I am not saying that our bill, Mr. Ahiafo, I'm not saying that our bill says that. I am only drawing a distinction or that this is what they have. Are we saying that we don't have similar things in our bill that could maybe put people at risk? That's what I'm saying.
Who are doing the comparison? The point at in the bill and the
Mr. Anyafo, unfortunately, a lot of what you're saying, we are not getting well. If you could maybe move a little, the connection seems to be very poor. I'd really appreciate it if you could just move a little, maybe so that the network connection would be better.
Yes. The point that I'm making.
So please go back a bit because we lost a lot of what you said.
We are making reference to a similar bill passed in Uganda. However, by the content of the Uganda bill, you're stating this morning that it has an element of death penalty, and people with that kind of disability are also being subjected to punishment. Such a thing is never in the bill and the reference in Ghana's parliament. There is no element of death penalty. If you try to equate the sanction to existing law, and that is Section 104 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, reducing the punishment from a minimum of 5 and maximum of 10 to a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 5. That is the only sanction prescribed by this particular law. There is not even a life imprisonment, let alone talking about a death penalty. Now, it is also an offense for you to attack anybody that you perceive to be LGBTQ. There is a clear provision in the bill before Parliament currently protecting people who are perceived to be LGBTQ. So our law might be quite different from what is happening in Uganda. So the fact that based on the elements of death penalty and sanction to people with disability, making the Uganda and the LGBTQ bill that they have passed into law a draconian, does not mean that the bill currently in Ghana's parliament is also a draconian.
So looking at the bill in its current form, we've seen agreement from both sides of parliament. What level of certainty do you have that it will pass the final stage and that Mr. President will give his assent to it?
Well, I cannot be speaking to Mr. President, but I can speak to what the law says we should do. By law, the second reading of the bill is done and it is passed at the second reading. It is now left for the business committee to program the bill for consideration. And after the consideration stage, it moves to the third reading and it is passed. Then, the bill is referred to the President of the Republic of Ghana, who would have to exercise the power vested in him to give a vesting assent, which is also regulated by law. Specifically, Article 106 states clearly that when the bill is referred to the President for royal assent, the President has two things to do, either to assent to the bill or to refuse to assent to the bill. And in a situation where the President refuses to assent to the bill, then the President must bring the bill back to Parliament, stating the reason for which he is unable to assent to the bill or what he wants Parliament to do before giving the royal assent. And that must happen within 14 days. So if the devil doesn't know the intention of a man, I cannot be speaking to the President, but this is what the law says. So now that the bill has passed the second reading, we are moving to the consideration stage. And for me, as a member of Parliament, I do not have control over that. I'm not even part of the business committee when it is programmed today that the consideration of the anti-LGBTQ bill be carried today, Tuesday, in Parliament. We will go to Parliament and exactly do that. So if after 48 hours it is programmed for a third reading, we will also do the third reading, it is passed, and then the clerk at table will take over, and then the bill will be referred to the President for a royal assent.
Yeah, I get your point, but I'm just saying that from where you sit, it is clear then that it's getting to, or it has got to the consideration stage. Then, of course, there will be the third stage of deliberations, and then it will go to Mr. President. From what you forecast, how long would it take before it gets to Mr. President? I mean, how soon likely would we still see this bill passed into law?
Well, I am a ranking member for Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. I can speak specifically to what happened to the committee. But now that the bill is in the domain of the entire Parliament, and I'm not in a position to program the bill, it's going to be very difficult for me to be given a timeline within which this particular bill will be passed into law.
I just want to ask you.
If I go to Parliament, whatever is on the business statement, the order paper, that is what I will do as a member of Parliament, because I'm not in a position to say that we are going to Parliament today, this should be the agenda.
Point made. I just want you to, before maybe your parting shots, since you'll be with us on this conversation to the end. This bill, the Proper Human Rights and Ghanaian Sexual Values Bill, that is how you've couched it.
Yes.
So you are saying that as of what you know that we do not know, as what you have seen on the committee that we are yet to see, that it will truly and wholly, because initially Dr. Apia Kubi was talking about the fact that it represents our culture and all of that it will truly represent what Ghanaians stand for in terms of sexual values and in terms of human rights. You know why I pose that question? Because some people are still contending, apart from Human Rights Watch, some members of the CDD, some members of academia, that in terms of human rights, this bill, if given assent, will infringe on some people's human rights. So can you say here and now that this bill will be reflective of Ghana and Ghanaians and everything we stand for?
Exactly the same. Because those who are making the argument that the bill will violate a human right, we have several rights. They should come out and mention one that will be violated if this particular bill is passed into law. I have looked at, you see, in Ghana, we have dedicated chapter 5 from Article 12. The whole Constitution, chapter 5, is dedicated to human rights. And I have sat down, look at this particular bill, look at all the constitutional imperatives in from Article 12 onwards, chapter 5 of the Constitution. I have not seen any aspect of this particular bill that seeks to trample upon anybody's rights. Well, are we saying that you are born naturally as a man and that at your age now, you want to have a right to transgender into a woman? And if the law says you cannot do that, then you argue that you have a right, that though you are created naturally as a man, you have a right to become a woman. Are we saying that we should be given a right as a man to marry a man? We should be given a right as a woman to marry a woman? What right are we talking about? Which provision in our Constitution that guarantees that right that they are talking about? They should mention the provision. They are talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They should mention a single provision in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that guarantees what they are asserting, that I am a man, I should be given the opportunity to marry a man. I'm a woman, I should be given the opportunity to marry a woman. Rather, the Constitution in Article 39(2), the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana in Article 39(2), says that we should do everything possible to protect our culture, develop our culture. Is same-sex marriage part of our culture? Whose culture is it? So, my brother, the argument that this particular bill, if passed into law, will trample upon their rights without mentioning any specific right that will be trampled upon, is giving me much interest as how a lecture in metaphysics gives to a child of 10 years. It's very bizarre, very laughable. I have a right to life. Which part of the bill is trampling upon my right to life? I have a right to move about. I have a right to work. Is a bill preventing anybody from working? They have forgotten the fact that all those rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution is subject to the right of others in a society. There is no absolute right. Do I have a right to become an armed robber? And when there is a law saying that you cannot be an armed robber, then I will say the law trample upon my right to become an armed robber. Do I have a right to become a murderer? Do I have a right to become a thief?
So I believe the
Once
point.
there is a law that makes these activities, same-sex marriage, a man transgendering into a woman, and a whole lot of things, since there is a law that makes it a crime, the tenets of our constitution says that nothing is a crime if at the time it is done, there is no law that makes it a crime. So if this bill is passed and makes proscribe those activities, doing a proscribed activity or an activity proscribed by an act of parliament is a crime. Therefore, you will be made to face the full recourse of the law that proscribes the activities that you are engaged in.
Hold for me as we wrap the conversation, Mr. Ahiafo, just to conclude. So I'm going to be taking your initial, your concluding thoughts, I should say, gentlemen. I'll start with you, Dr. Apiakubi. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? What are your expectations moving forward, Dr. Apiakubi?
We are just hoping that after everything is done in Parliament, again, Honorable Ahiafo, we are very grateful for you and your team. We are hoping that the President will actually sign the bill so that it can become law. I would like to say that, again, want to emphasize that when it comes to this LGBT thing, it's not just even a man sleeping with a man and a man marrying another man, a woman marrying another man. It's way, way beyond that. Just in 2016, 2019, twice a guy called Asla Brinson, whose real name actually is Adam Graham, raped some women and went to a court. And when he was there in Scotland, he just said that he's a woman. Right away changed to be a woman and went to women's prison. You see how many men who have now gone to a women's prison and be sleeping with them, impregnating even some of them. So transgenderism is becoming very, very powerful and strong. In the US right now, my 13-year-old daughter will go to buy an alcohol and they will say that he's a minor, so they shouldn't give it to her. But if she goes, that they should cut her breast off, give her puberty blockers, she won't even need approval from me, the parent. And some of these things, we've seen it afar coming. And so we want to prevent it before it becomes a bone of contention in our country. And so from now, we just really hoping that things will move fast. The bill will be done to come to law. I'm grateful that though the law, our bill has really delayed, I'm very, very grateful that Ugandan one was passed before ours. Because I remember when CNN came to Ghana, I was one of those they were trying to interview and kept on pushing that our law is going to be, they were saying all sorts of things. Now that Ugandan one came, they're pretty much silent about ours because they realize that Ghanaians are much, much more tolerant in so many things than what they think. That we are very peaceful people. And as I always say that these people, they've been with us and they've never liked it. And we're talking about even culture. This has been European culture for many, 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 many years. It is not just recently. It's their culture. In fact, history tells us about people like Emperor Nero and Domitian and them marrying, castrating their housemates and putting women dressed on them and marrying them. Seeing the Nero getting married as a man, marrying another man. It's historical fact. So it has been their culture. Well, they respect their culture, but for the sake of Christ, they should also respect our culture. The same as we always say, that sometimes it's a mind-boggling when a pansexual is accepted. A person who sleeps with both animate and inanimate objects is accepted and actually, hailed highly in their country, in their continent. And a polygamist can't be, where a Ghanaian in Canada was arrested because they were using bigamy law against him. How can they have this kind of mindset? Sometimes we think that the Western world, they think that because our hands are in their mouth, they can do whatever they want to do, and we have to accept it. For now, we are grateful for our parliament to say, no, enough is enough of using money and using other things to just take us to ransom. Now, we are really standing what we believe, and we know very well that this law, as Mr. Pintos was saying something, I was very grateful, that, if you think that the punishment is too harsh, let's judge about it. But you cannot join the train of Arakoto Paus and the Chimenus that, no, let's throw the thing away totally. No, we can't do like that. We have to stand. There's a saying in our Kan language, so that is what we are actually doing.
All right, so you're taking it out from the roots, extracting it. For you, Lawyer Kweku Painter, what would be your concluding thoughts on this bill? It's now got to the consideration stage, and then there'll be the third stage, the third reading, from which point it will head to, if all the approvals are given, it will head to the office of Mr. President, and he would have to give his assent unless he is of a contrary opinion, in which case he would have to state what he is against, and then it would come back to Parliament. But without that, he would have to give his assent. And if he does not, there are other options that Parliament can trigger. What would be your expectation in the coming weeks on this bill?
Because of the political mood of the country against next year elections, the president dares not. He can't do anything but grant access, because it would be politically suicidal for the president to refuse to grant access to the law.
The president is not running again. He's not going for another term.
He has his party. He has his party. It's not about himself. It's about his party. It's about breaking the aids and breaking all the bricks. So that's the political consideration. I said he dares not. You mark me. Just mark me. Because, people have watched the mood of the president over the period, and it appears that somehow he sympathizes, but he's caught in a political, whirlwind, where he has to get along. So we live to see. That's the first point that I'd like to make. Second point I'd like to make is that, however and whichever way and form the law comes out, it will certainly have its final day in the Supreme Court, and mark me down on that one. The third point is about what the doctor said about, because the Western world thinks we have our hands in their mouth. It's not they think. It is really true. Well, back in 1990, I did a dissertation for a master's program, and the title of the dissertation was Political Conditionality in Economic Assistance to Africa. And the project work ended up by drawing a kind of relationship, a strong one, between the kind of aid that they give to Africa or African countries from the time of independence up to the 80s and 90s, and it became clear that all these economic conditionalities, all the conditions have been contingent upon our request for assistance. And it started in the 60s from macroeconomics to microeconomics to when we had entered, remember around Rawlinson, we had a structural adjustment program, the PAMS card, and all of those things. Why would a revolutionary go to the World Bank and IMF for assistance? All about assistance. And once you come for their funds, they tell you what to do. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Then in the 80s, late 80s into the 90s, it became political. They were now asking African countries to, liberalize their politics, to enable all kinds of freedoms and whatever. Of course, we're all beneficiaries of it. But underlining and underneath everything happening on the surface is the pulling of strings, what we call conditionality. Then I remember that when I did the work, my conclusion, I posed a question. And I'm going to use that to provide an article one of these days. I asked, so where do we go from here? Core values Africa. Are we not going to move to social conditionalities? Because they capture the economic, they capture the political. And now I pose the question. And I'm not surprised in the least that now they move to the social, that now want to regulate how we must live as a people with our own laws. And are you surprised that the Middle East and other countries which are not dependent on them, nobody cares what they do there?
Right.
Khashoggi, call all of them. And so that's what is happening. We are dependent on them, so much dependent on them. And it's about our political ideology. Are you surprised that just before, President Trump became his office, there was a massive push by all these Western countries to push Africans to introduce gay and all of these things. And then when President Trump came, because everybody knew President Trump stand, then they all retreated. But now that the White House has been taken over by the Democrats, where a Secretary of State is a gay, their transport minister, I think, he himself is a gay with a gay husband, a man with a gay husband. On the day he was sworn in, was CNN with his husband, male husband. If you pick CNN, half of their people, it's not about half. At least I know some of their popular presenters, they are gays. Quest is a gay. I saw it. The guy who just left is a gay. So don't be surprised about some of these things and why they are pushing. And they are threatening us with sanctions. So the issue lies with us. As long as this IMF thing that Ghana went for, I don't know the fine details, but I will not be surprised if there are things which are written that requires that we dare not do the kind of things that we think we can do. That is really the real issue, the real deal. And so the third point is we must brace ourselves for what these people are doing. I'm talking about the West, I'm talking about America.
Okay.
The hypocritical position that they take on this matter.
Of course, we also saw American Vice President Kamala Harris when she was in the country, and the rhetoric. We heard what she had to say on some of these matters. But we're grateful that you shared all of these thoughts about the bill and about what you're looking forward to. Mr. Ahiafo, you have the final bite.
With all due respect, fellow Ghanaians, danger begets man. It is a crowd of distress that will summon for relief.
Right.
My brothers and sisters, law is supposed to be in aid of development. Law is supposed to be an instrument for social engineering. Law is supposed to be used to proscribe activities that will not bring development, progress to any country. Looking at the activities of the LGBTQ, I am of the view that if LGBTQ is encouraged in our community, our society will gradually be driving towards extinction. Because as I'm speaking to you, I am born out of my mother and my father getting married. It is not my father and another man that brings forth to me to be able to be talking to you. If we all decide to go LGBTQ, the time will come that Ghana as a country may not even exist as a country. So if some countries are practicing LGBTQ and they are gradually delving into extinction, that doesn't mean that what they are doing is good. Some of the countries have realized it. That is why if you go to Spain today, they have appointed a minister responsible for sex. What is the reason? What's the rationale behind? I think the way to go as a country is, as a matter of urgency, pass the Anti-LGBTQ Act, because it is not in line with our culture.
All right.
Ghana is a sovereign country. As indicated by one of the speakers, in their country, they can prosecute for bigamy because you are attempting to be polygamous. But Ghana as a country, polygamy traditionally and according to Islamic religion is allowed. But they don't cherish it. That is their culture. And we respect them for their culture. Why can't they, for one, respect us for our culture?
Right.
I happen to be in the European Parliament in Brussels. And according to the President of the European Parliament, as for the LGBTQ activities, it is non-negotiable. It is non-negotiable for them. But that doesn't mean that that is what must be practiced in the whole world. Our constitution enjoins us to protect our culture. Therefore, we are making a law to say that you can do it elsewhere, but in Ghana as a sovereign country, if you are a man, born at birth as a man, you will remain a man until your death.
All right.
If you are
Thank
a
you.
woman, born as a woman from birth, you remain a woman until death. And we are not going to allow two males to marry each other. We are not going to allow females to marry each other. Bestiality will not be encouraged. Pedophilia will not be encouraged.
Mr. Ahiafo, we have to cap off the conversation here. We're grateful, so grateful for your time. Interestingly, I was just reading yesterday about the Netherlands, a beauty pageant, I think Miss Universe, where a trans person, born a boy, who transitioned and now won this beauty pageant in the Netherlands. I think in Spain it had happened. And we just wait to see how these developments impact globally. But here in Ghana, of course, we have the position that we have adopted, and we wait to see what this bill will bring to us and whether the president will give his assent. It's TikTok, and we in Ghana wait to see how things will go. Gentlemen, we're so grateful. Bernard Ahiafo is a ranking member, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Thank you, sir. We also had Dr. Justice Apiakubi, executive member of the Coalition on Proper Human Rights. He contributed to the bill. And we also have Kweku Pencil, a lawyer. All these gentlemen joined us for this conversation. I'm going to be taking a breather, and when we return, we'll get interactive with you on this all-important matter as far as the anti-LGBTQI plus bill is concerned. We'll also be talking about that wrong administration of medicine in Kenya, say in the Ashanti region. In fact, we posed a question on Facebook, on JoyNews on Facebook, I should say. Have you ever been administered, I should say, have you ever been administered with the wrong drugs because of the handwriting of a doctor, for example? Or have you ever been administered with the wrong drugs, even not because of handwriting, but administered with the wrong drugs? If you've not shared your thoughts there when we activate the phone lines, be sure to call us. But I'll tell you, in the course of the break, what I'm going to be doing. I have a bottle of Awake drinking water waiting for me, and here's why. It is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. And it goes further. Whatever the size you're looking for, you're thinking of the kids, 330 ml, easy to put in their bags and they're good to go. 500 ml, 750 milliliters, 1.5 liters. There's an option for everybody. But if you still want more, maybe for your office or home, they have 19-liter jar bottles that are ideal for that situation. So all you need to do now is drink Awake Purified Drinking Water wherever you go. Stay awake with Awake Purified Drinking Water. Remember, it's also one for life. For every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. Those with heart ailments, a lot of them in this country because of the cost, struggle to foot the bills. By purchasing a bottle of Awake Water, you actually give them hope. You give them a chance. It's another quality product by Casapreco Company Limited. If you'd like to purchase in bulk, just call this number, 0262 351 251. 0262 351 251. This advert is FDA approved. We'll be back after the break.